A broke student helped an old man cross the street, moments before the man revealed he'd pay her tuition. That simple act of kindness, born from Maya Bennett's exhausted heart rather than calculation, would alter the trajectory of her life in ways she couldn't possibly imagine on that bitter December morning. Maya's hands trembled as she crumpled the final notice from the university's financial aid office. 3 days. She had 3 days to come up with $4,800 for last semester's outstanding balance, or she wouldn't be able to register for her final semester. 3 days to save 4 years of sacrifice, of working double shifts at the campus coffee shop, of surviving on ramen and free condiment packets. The paper crinkled as she shoved it deep into her coat pocket, a coat that had seen better days, its once vibrant blue faded to a tired gray, the stuffing escaping from a tear in the right sleeve. Much like Maya herself, it was hanging on by mere threads. She glanced at her watch, a cheap plastic thing with a cracked face that had belonged to her mother. 7:45 a.m. If she sprinted, she might make it to her 8 a.m. economics final. The irony wasn't lost on her, rushing to an exam about financial principles while her own finances crumbled beneath her. Outside her cramped studio apartment, the winter air bit at her cheeks. Her breath emerged in desperate little clouds as she half walked, half jogged down the sidewalk. The sky hung low and heavy with the promise of snow, mirroring the weight pressing down on her shoulders. "Focus," she whispered to herself, the word dissolving into the frigid air. "Just get through today." But today seemed determined to test her already fraying resolve. Halfway to campus, her phone buzzed with a message from her manager at the coffee shop. "Sorry, Maya. Corporate's cutting hours. I can only give you 3 shifts next week." Something cracked inside her chest. 3 shifts wouldn't even cover her groceries, let alone make a dent in what she owed the university. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let tears form. They'd only freeze on her face, and she couldn't afford that small humiliation on top of everything else. As she approached the busy intersection near campus, the pedestrian signal flashed its warning. Maya broke into a run, her worn boots slipping slightly on the icy sidewalk. The economics building loomed just 2 blocks away. Professor Harrington locked the doors precisely at 8 a.m., his infamous punctuality a source of dread among students. The light changed. Maya stepped into the crosswalk, mentally calculating how many minutes remained before her academic career potentially ended, both from missing the exam and from her financial disaster. That's when she noticed him. An elderly man stood at the curb, one hesitant foot extended toward the crosswalk. His posture suggested a silent battle between determination and frailty. White hair peeked out from beneath a well-worn fedora, and his wool overcoat hung slightly too large on his thin frame. In one gnarled hand, he clutched a wooden cane, in the other, a small paper bag. Their eyes met briefly. His were a startling blue, the kind of clear, piercing blue that seemed to belong to another era. They crinkled slightly at the corners, a lifetime of expressions etched into the surrounding skin. Maya glanced at her watch again. 7:52 a.m. She looked back at the old man, then toward the economics building in the distance. Something in his uncertain stance pulled at her, a vulnerability that resonated with her own. Without fully processing her decision, Maya found herself stepping back onto the curb beside him. "Would you like some help crossing, sir?" The words emerged softly, carried away almost immediately by a gust of winter wind. The old man turned toward her, surprise flickering across his weathered face. "That's very kind of you, young lady. These crosswalks seem to get faster every year." His voice was a gentle rumble, like distant thunder without the threat. Maya offered her arm, and after a moment's hesitation, he placed his hand in the crook of her elbow. His touch was light, almost weightless, yet somehow anchoring. "I'm not usually this slow," he explained as they stepped off the curb together. "Took a fall last month. Doctor says I'm healing fine, but these icy mornings..." He trailed off with a small shake of his head. "The city's terrible about salting this intersection," Maya replied, unconsciously slowing her pace to match his. Each careful step they took together was another second ticking away before her exam. A strange calm settled over her despite this, as if for these few moments, crossing the street with a stranger had become the only task in the world that mattered. Halfway across, the pedestrian signal began flashing its warning. The old man's grip tightened slightly on her arm. "We have time," Maya assured him, though she wasn't entirely certain they did. "No rush." His steps were methodical, deliberate. one foot placed carefully in front of the other, the cane tapping a gentle rhythm against the asphalt. In another life, Maya might have felt impatience bubbling up inside her, but something about his dignified determination struck a chord. When they reached the opposite curb, the old man released her arm with a grateful nod. "Thank you, my dear. Simple kindness is increasingly rare these days." Maya smiled, a genuine smile that surprised her with its warmth. "You're welcome. Have a good day, sir." She glanced at her watch once more, 7:56 a.m., and prepared to dash the remaining distance to her exam. "Wait," the man called, his voice stronger now. "Might I know your name?" She hesitated, one foot already pointed toward campus. "Maya. Maya Bennett. Maya," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "I'm Walter. Walter Abernathy." He shifted his paper bag to his cane hand and extended his right hand toward her. The gesture was so formal, so out of place in the rushed modern world of university life, that Maya couldn't help but respond. His handshake was firmer than she expected, his skin cool and papery against hers. "Are you late for something important?" Walter asked, those keen blue eyes noticing her frequent glances at her watch. "An economics final," Maya admitted. "But it's fine. I can still make it." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Even if she sprinted now, the best she could hope for was arriving as Professor Harrington locked the doors. Walter nodded thoughtfully. "Economics. Important subject." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small business card, offering it to her. "Perhaps you could spare a few minutes more to help an old man find his way? I'm looking for the administration building, and these campus maps might as well be written in Sanskrit for all the sense they make to me." Maya stared at the card. It was simple, cream-colored cardstock with just a name, Walter Abernathy, and a phone number, nothing else. No title, no company? The 7:57 on her watch seemed to pulse accusingly. Professor Harrington never allowed makeups. Never. But the way Walter looked at her, expectant yet understanding, as if he'd accept her refusal without judgment, made the decision for her. "The administration building is actually on my way," she said, tucking the card into her pocket alongside the crumpled financial notice. "I'd be happy to show you." Relief and something else, something Maya couldn't quite identify, flashed across Walter's face. "Most appreciated." They walked slowly along the campus path, frost crunching beneath their feet. The morning sun struggled to pierce the cloud cover, casting everything in a muted, dreamlike glow. Students rushed past them, a blur of backpacks and determination, while Maya and Walter moved at their own deliberate pace. "Are you a student here, Maya?" Walter asked, his cane keeping time with their steps. "Senior year, business administration with a minor in nonprofit management." The words carried a hollow ache now. Senior year, possibly ending before it truly began. "Nonprofit management?" Walter echoed. "That's unusual for a business major. Most chase the corporate dollars." Maya shrugged, adjusting her pace as Walter navigated around a patch of ice. "I grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of good people needed help. The local community center was the only reason some kids had after-school programs or summer meals." She paused, surprised at herself for sharing so much with a stranger. "I'd like to give back someday." Walter nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Noble ambition." They walked in companionable silence for a moment before he spoke again. "You know, I never went to college myself. Different times back then. Started working at 16 and never stopped." "What did you do?" Maya asked, genuine curiosity momentarily displacing her anxiety about the missed exam. A smile played at the corners of Walter's mouth. "A bit of everything. Started as a janitor. Ended up owning a few businesses." "A few businesses?" Maya repeated, studying him with new interest. His coat was quality wool, she realized, but worn with age rather than poverty. His shoes, though salt-stained from winter streets, were handcrafted leather. Small operations, nothing fancy. Walter said dismissively. "The kind that serve real people, not Wall Street." They rounded the corner, and the administration building came into view, a stately brick structure with white columns and large windows. Maya felt a twinge of regret. Their walk was almost over, and with it this strange interlude in her crumbling day. "That's your destination," she said, gesturing toward the building. "Is there a particular office you're looking for?" Walter stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "Financial aid, actually." Something in his tone made Maya look up sharply. Those clear blue eyes were studying her with an intensity that hadn't been there before. "I have a meeting with the director at 8:30, Walter continued, "about a scholarship fund I'm establishing." "That's wonderful." Maya said, confusion creeping into her voice. "They're on the second floor, east wing." Walter nodded but made no move toward the building. Instead, he reached into his paper bag and pulled out a thermos. "Would you join me for coffee before I go in? There's a bench over there. I always bring extra." Maya hesitated. The economics exam was already lost to her. What difference would a few more minutes make? "I'd like that," she said finally. The bench was cold beneath them, but the coffee Walter poured into the thermos cap was blissfully hot. Maya cupped it between her hands, letting the warmth seep into her frozen fingers. It was good coffee, rich and complex, nothing like the cheap instant powder she rationed in her apartment. "You missed your exam to help me, didn't you?" Walter asked quietly. Maya stared into her coffee. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." His voice was gentle but firm. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" The question hung between them, crystallizing in the cold air. Maya took a sip of coffee, buying time to consider her answer. "My mom used to say that kindness isn't what you do when it's convenient," she said finally. "It's what you do when it costs you something." Walter was silent for a long moment. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She was..." The past tense slipped out before Maya could catch it. Walter nodded, understanding without needing explanation. "My Helen passed 5 years ago. 52 years together wasn't nearly enough." "I'm sorry," Maya said softly. "My mom's been gone 3 years. Car accident." "And your father?" "Never really in the picture." Maya's hands tightened around the warm cup. "It's been just me since the accident." Walter sipped his coffee, his eyes distant. "Just you," he repeated. "And yet you stopped to help an old man cross the street, even knowing what it might cost you." Maya shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "Anyone would have..." "No," Walter said with quiet certainty. "They wouldn't have..." "I stood at that corner for 12 minutes, Maya. Watched 23 people walk by, I counted. Some averted their eyes. Most never looked up from their phones. You were the only one who stopped." A flush crept up Maya's neck that had nothing to do with the coffee's warmth. "I should probably get going," she said, finishing her drink and handing the cup back to Walter. "Good luck with your meeting." She stood, adjusting her backpack on her shoulders. The weight of her situation came rushing back. The missed exam, the looming tuition deadline, the reduced work hours. The momentary peace of their shared coffee evaporated like her visible breath in the cold air. "Maya," Walter called as she turned to leave, "what would you say if I told you I don't believe in coincidences?" She looked back at him, puzzled. "I'm not sure I follow." Walter carefully recapped his thermos and returned it to his paper bag. "I'm not actually meeting with the financial aid director about establishing a scholarship fund." He paused, those blue eyes holding hers. "I'm meeting with him about you." Maya froze. "Me? But you didn't even know my name until 20 minutes ago." "No," Walter agreed, "but I knew I was looking for someone. Someone who would stop to help an old man cross the street even when they had somewhere important to be." He patted the bench beside him. "Please sit back down. I have a story to tell you, if you'll hear it." Confusion and curiosity warred within her. Slowly, Maya sank back onto the bench. Walter turned slightly to face her. 63 years ago, I was where you are now. Not a student, as I said, I never had that opportunity, but broke, desperate, and alone. I'd just moved to this city with nothing but $20 and a change of clothes." He gazed out across the frost-covered campus. "It was winter then, too. Colder than this, if you can believe it. I couldn't afford a proper coat, so I layered newspapers under my shirt. Still, I was freezing, hungry, and had nowhere to sleep that night." Maya listened, transfixed, as Walter continued. "I was standing outside a diner, trying to decide if I should spend my last $5 on food or a bus ticket to the shelter across town. That's when an old woman approached me. She wore a red scarf, I remember that clearly. She looked at me and said, 'Young man, would you help me carry my groceries home? My arthritis is acting up something terrible.'" Walter smiled at the memory. "I almost said no. Almost. But something in her eyes, kindness maybe, or recognition of another soul in need, made me agree. I carried her bags 6 blocks to her apartment. They weren't even heavy. I think now she could have managed just fine. When we reached her door, she invited me in for soup. Said she always made too much for just herself. That soup was the best meal I'd ever had. As I was leaving, she pressed $20 into my hand and said, 'When you're able, pass it on. Not to me, to someone else who needs it.'" Walter fell silent for a moment, lost in remembrance. Her name was Eleanor Daniels. She ended up becoming my landlady, renting me her spare room at a price I could actually afford. Later, she helped me get my first real job at her brother's hardware store. Eventually, I saved enough to buy that store when her brother retired." He turned back to Maya, his eyes bright with emotion. "That was just the beginning. That hardware store became 5, then 10. I expanded into other businesses, made some good investments, done well for myself over the years." Maya sat very still, processing his words. "That's a wonderful story, but I don't understand what it has to do with me." Walter reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. "Eleanor passed away 30 years ago, but I never forgot her or her kindness. I made a promise to myself that I would someday do for someone else what she did for me. Not just small help, but life-changing help when I found the right person." He held the envelope out to Maya. "I've been coming to this campus every morning for 2 weeks, Maya. Walking slowly across that intersection, watching and waiting. Testing the character of the young people here." Maya stared at the envelope but didn't take it. "Testing?" Walter nodded. "I have more money than I need and no children to leave it to. I decided long ago that I would find someone worthy, someone with kindness and integrity despite their own struggles, to help in a significant way. And you think that's me? Because I helped you cross the street?" Maya's voice rose slightly in disbelief. "Because you helped me cross the street when you had every reason not to," Walter corrected gently. "Because you sacrificed something important to show kindness to a stranger. Because when I asked why, you spoke of your mother's wisdom about kindness being most meaningful when it costs you something." He pressed the envelope into her hands. "This isn't charity, Maya. It's an investment in the kind of person this world needs more of." Her fingers trembled as she accepted the envelope. It was unsealed. Slowly, she opened it and pulled out a document. As her eyes scanned the contents, her breath caught. It was a check, made out to Westlake University, for the exact amount of her outstanding balance, $4,800. "I don't understand," she whispered, looking up at Walter with wide eyes. "The financial aid office was quite helpful when I inquired about students facing financial hardship," Walter explained. "I may have implied I was a distant relative looking to help family. They couldn't give me names, of course, but they did mention that several students were facing disenrollment this week due to unpaid balances." Maya's vision blurred with unshed tears. "I can't accept this. It's too much from a stranger." "We're hardly strangers now," Walter said with a gentle smile. "And there's more." He reached into his coat again and produced a second envelope, thicker than the first. "This contains the details of a private scholarship I've established. It will cover your final semester's tuition in full, plus a stipend for books and living expenses." Maya's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the envelopes. "Why? Why would you do this for someone you just met?" Walter's face softened. "Because 63 years ago, Eleanor saw something in me worth saving. Today, I see that same something in you." He patted her hand. "The world tried to harden your heart with loss and struggle, yet you still stopped to help an old man. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." A tear slipped down Maya's cheek, quickly followed by another. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept," Walter replied. "Say you'll finish your degree. Say that someday when you're able, you'll remember this moment and pass it on in your own way." Maya looked down at the envelopes in her hands, pieces of paper that represented not just financial salvation, but validation of every sacrifice she'd made, every principle she'd held on to, even when it seemed foolish to do so. "There's one condition?" Walter added, his tone becoming slightly more businesslike. Maya looked up, waiting. "I'd like to meet for coffee once a week. I find I enjoy your company, and at my age, interesting conversation is more valuable than money." A laugh bubbled up through Maya's tears. "I think I can manage that." Walter smiled, the skin around his eyes crinkling. "Excellent. And perhaps you might help an old businessman understand this non-profit management interest of yours. I've been thinking my estate could use more direction in that area." The implications of his words weren't lost on Maya. This wasn't just about tuition. It was about a door opening to possibilities she'd never dared imagine. "I have to ask," she said after a moment, "what if I hadn't stopped this morning? What if I'd walked past like everyone else?" Walter's eyes twinkled. "Then I'd have been back at that crosswalk tomorrow and the day after for as long as it took. The right person always appears, Maya. Sometimes we just need patience to recognize them." As they sat on that cold bench, the winter sun finally broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the frost-covered ground. Maya felt something shift inside her, as if her world, which had been slowly contracting around her with each setback, suddenly expanded beyond the horizon. "I should get to that meeting," Walter said, carefully rising to his feet. "The financial aid director is expecting me at 8:30 to process that check." Maya stood too, still clutching the envelopes. "Can I walk with you? I think I need to speak with Professor Harrington about that missed exam." Walter offered his arm with a smile. "I'd be honored." As they walked slowly toward the administration building, Maya felt the weight of the financial notice in her pocket. No longer a death sentence, but a reminder of how quickly life could change. All because she'd stopped to help an old man cross the street. "Walter," she said as they approached the building, "thank you. Not just for this," she gestured with the envelopes, "but for seeing me." The old man nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. "The greatest gift we can give another person is to truly see them, Maya. Remember that when you're running your nonprofit someday." She smiled at his certainty about her future. For the first time in years, that future didn't feel like a fragile thing built on desperate hope, but a path illuminated by possibility. As they climbed the steps to the administration building together, Maya now supporting Walter's elbow as he navigated the stairs, she realized that something profound had happened in the span of a single morning. In helping Walter cross the street, she had unknowingly crossed a threshold in her own life. 3 years later, Maya stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone as she surveyed the crowded community center. Sunlight streamed through the newly installed windows, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. On the wall behind her hung a simple plaque, the Eleanor Daniels Walter Abernathy Youth Center. In the front row, Walter sat with his hands folded over his cane, those clear blue eyes, a little cloudier now but no less sharp, watching her with unmistakable pride. 5 years ago, Maya began, her voice steady and sure, I was a broke college student about to lose everything I'd worked for. Today, I stand before you as the executive director of this renovated center, with 6 after-school programs, a summer meal service, and college preparation workshops that have already helped 15 local students secure scholarships. She paused, meeting Walter's gaze with a smile. None of this would exist without the generosity and vision of one man who taught me that kindness isn't random. It's a choice we make even when, especially when, it costs us something. Walter dipped his head in acknowledgement, his eyes suspiciously bright. But this center isn't just about what one person can give to many, Maya continued. It's about creating a chain of kindness that extends far beyond these walls. Each student who benefits from our programs commits to community service hours. Each success story becomes inspiration for the next child who walks through our doors. She gestured to the teenagers seated in the rows behind Walter, the first graduates of their college prep program. These young people aren't just receiving help, they're learning to become the helpers. They're discovering that no matter how little you think you have, you always have something to give. After the ceremony, as the crowd mingled over punch and cookies, Maya found Walter sitting quietly in a corner, observing the festivities with contentment. "You disappeared during the tour," she said, taking the seat beside him. "Missing the excitement?" Walter chuckled. "At my age, excitement is overrated. I was just taking it all in." He gestured around the room. "You've done remarkable things here, Maya." "We've done remarkable things," she corrected gently. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Nonsense," Walter said with a dismissive wave. "The money just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and built all this." His voice softened. "You remind me so much of Eleanor sometimes. She had that same determination." Maya covered his weathered hand with her own. Over the past 3 years, their weekly coffee meetings had evolved into a deep friendship. Walter had become the grandfather she'd never had, guiding her through graduate school and the establishment of the nonprofit foundation that now operated the community center. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into her jacket pocket. She pulled out a small box and placed it in his palm. Walter raised an eyebrow. "You know I don't need gifts, my dear." "It's not exactly a gift," Maya replied. "More of a full-circle moment." Curiosity piqued, Walter opened the box. Inside lay a single key. "What's this?" he asked, looking up at her in confusion. Maya smiled. "The key to room 317 at Westlake Residence Hall. Starting next semester, it belongs to Lucia Ramirez, the first recipient of the Walter Abernathy Pay It Forward Scholarship." Understanding dawned on Walter's face. "You established a scholarship?" Maya nodded. "From my first year's salary. It's not much, just enough to cover housing for one student who demonstrates exceptional character and financial need. The foundation will match it going forward." Walter stared at the key, then back at Maya, his eyes filling with tears. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Maya said softly. "That's what makes it kindness." Walter carefully closed the box around the key, his hands trembling slightly. "You know, when I decided to test the character of college students at that crosswalk, I never imagined how much I would receive in return." "That's how kindness works," Maya replied. "It's never just one-directional." As they sat together watching the community celebrate around them, Maya thought about that cold December morning 3 years ago, how close she had come to hurrying past Walter in her rush to make her exam. How a simple choice to pause, to see another person's need despite her own struggles, had altered the course of her life. And now, with the scholarship, that moment at the crosswalk would continue to echo forward, creating new possibilities for others she would never even meet. Walter seemed to follow her thoughts. "Eleanor would be pleased," he said quietly. "This is exactly what she meant by passing it on." Maya nodded, squeezing his hand. "A broke student helped an old man cross the street," she mused, "and somehow they both ended up exactly where they needed to be." Walter's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "Somehow," he agreed, "that's exactly how kindness works." Around them, the community center hummed with life and possibility, a testament to what can grow from the smallest seeds of compassion planted in the harshest conditions. And in that moment, Maya knew with absolute certainty that this was just the beginning.